Welcome to the HeartWork Project. The goal of the HeartWork Project is to simplify complicated conversations around mental health. Jenni Davies talks to guests about mental health, personal growth, and unlearning everything we think we know. Enjoy. I am hitting record. There we go. Cool. So welcome to the HeartWork Project. Today we're talking to Simon Hall. Hi, Simon. You want to tell me about yourself?
Hey, well, yeah, I've literally just stepped out of the gym, so I'm pretty jacked up on coffee right now. So I'm ready to pretty much dive into this conversation and see what value we can give to your audience, to be honest.
Great.
So yeah.
Do you want to tell me to start just a bit about yourself? I know I've discovered you actually through my partner, Mike, who had you on his podcast a long time ago. And I am involved in the editing process of the podcast. So I listen to it, choose up the clips, do whatever else. And so I listened to the podcast and I found a lot of things you had to say really interesting. And that's how I kind of discovered you.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, yeah, look, I mean, for me, pretty much what I do is, it's a bit of a lengthy story, but in short, at current, I pretty much invest and grow businesses. So at the minute, a big passion for me is I've gone down a lot of different lines in business, and something within me deep keeps coming back to create something that really helps people. And I think that's really been a core value of mine over the years. So right now we're just in the processes of building a platform that operates globally, actually helping people both in personal growth development and also business growth and development. So pretty much when I was first kind of getting into the areas of building businesses and trying to figure myself out, there wasn't a lot of resources there to help. Or there was a lot of scam artist mentors charging hundreds of thousands to get into the right circles to do so. So for me, it was like, right, how do we create something that's globally accessible and can genuinely help people both grow as an individual, but also grow to build something of purpose that they want to build? Because one of the biggest correlations I've found in what I do is when people really kind of get into the driving seat of their own life, they have passions, dreams, and goals that they want to go and fulfill on their own. But it becomes then, once you've got that, quite a hard place to either create the change and make a jump from a business that you might be in, might be paying well, you might be financially safe, but very unfulfilled in life. So you might be life poor, but financial rich. And it becomes quite a lost step. So for us, it's how do we create the communities? How do we create the platforms, get the teachers, get the right affiliations, where we can really create something where the person can find the right things that they need to both move forwards and grow something that they want to grow, really, and create freedom in life.
I find a lot of the entrepreneurs and stuff I speak to, or at least in the life coaching mentor world, there's this, maybe it's a stigma, but there's this push towards just grab something and go. And it's like, wait, but some people actually want to think it through, stop, maybe jumping down that new idea isn't the right thing. So would you say your platform is about identifying what that thing is, or?
It is. The thing is about me, and I think this is why we're very unique, is I fall very in the middle. I can go very conscious, if you want to use those words, but I can also be very no, you've got to take action. You've got to do, and I really think that is the thing of life. I think you've really got to decide. You can go too far down the rabbit hole of sitting in a lotus position, meditating and trying to find clarity. Or you can go to the other adverse side, which is just taking all in balls to the wall action and burning yourself out. And I really think that you need elements of both. I think spiritualness or consciousness is a very underlooked thing in entrepreneurship because it provides clarity, direction, vision, purpose. It highlights areas of growth, but at the same time, you can only grow and step forwards within taking action. So a lot of the time, especially in early startups, a lot of people have these amazing business ideas, amazing services, but they won't take the right actions that make them work, like stepping out on social media, actually executing on the smallest actions to get the business off the floor.
Right.
So I lie in the middle. You need elements of both, and what works for one person won't work for another, and one man's remedy can be another man's poison. So for us, it's very important, and I know from my own experiences, to sometimes drown out the noise of everything and find what works for you.
Right.
What allows you to stay in the observatory tower and take a look over everything that's going on, but yet come down into the trenches to take the right actions. And I think that's why we're so different. I like to call it the right approach, because I genuinely believe that this is the approach that works for the individual. Whereas in the self-development world, you're just thrown. You need to do this 6 hours of meditation every day. You need to journal. You need to blah, 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 blah. Where some days, yes, you might need to do that, but others no. And
for sure. It's actually kind of funny that you say that. I'm thinking about Mike and myself, Mike, my partner. So he is way more of an idea person who's like, go, 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 go. He is the entrepreneurial, like, stereotype. And then there's me, who up until like a year ago, I didn't even see myself as an entrepreneur yet. I've had projects my whole life. I've always been much more slow. Like I'm quick at action, but I take my time with things. I'm that, if you want to go the other side, I'm the person who sits and meditates on something for 4 hours until 3 years has gone by and I haven't done anything with it.
yeah, well, I totally get that. But two things. That's why it works. Like you're clearly the right brain creative and he's clearly the left brain logistics, systems, XYZ. And if you look at any major business that's made it, there's always two people behind the driving wheel of any big movement. One that creates is the vision and the voice, and one that cleans the shit up after the person's made the mess, puts it into systems of growth.
That's so funny.
And I think that's the same thing in relationships as well. I think it's the yin to your yang, and that's what makes it special, is that you're both opposing.
For sure.
That's funny. And but then the other thing that I was gonna go down the wormhole with that sort of approach is you've kind of got to know which one you are, and a lot of people don't.
Yes. I agree.
So
see, here's funny because for a long time, I mistook myself as somebody who was like, I'm super efficient. I'm very productive. I'm very good at getting things done, but that doesn't mean I'm very good at ideas. So I'm very good at taking an idea and executing it, but it can't be my ideas. Does that make sense? Like, for example, in Mike's business, I'm essentially the executor and he's the one who comes up with all the ideas. But in my own business, I'm having a really hard time coming up with all these ideas and executing on them because they're my ideas. And suddenly it's not about, it's like, how do I know if my ideas are the right ideas?
Oh, this is going to be fun. Look, I like friend to a friend. I would always say, like, this is the fun thing. You're never going to know if it's the right idea unless you take the step forwards into that idea and act. Because if you don't, you'll never know.
Yep.
You will never know. And
it's literally the conversation I have with Mike all the time. He sits down and he goes, Jenny, like, just do it. And I'm like, what if, blah, blah, blah.
But what I'd suggest in that is look at your like a huge level of growth for you as an entrepreneur now is to break down whatever that is. So every time it's like, no, I need to go and do this. Like, what triggers? For me, this was massive. I was here for quite a long time. It used to be, if I fail, people will think I'm shit or stupid. And it took me a real long time to get over that. But what really happens is when you start breaking that down, it's like, no, I can go, this didn't work, blah, blah, blah. And then you can go again. So it's a big thing.
So it's funny you say this, considering that this is like a mental health podcast and now we're going down the business perspective route, but that's totally okay because again, my business that I'm like moving towards is in the mental health space. So it's funny. So when it comes to things like my writing, I write about mental health. I am a poet. I have all that kind of stuff. Amazing. I have no issue sharing my most vulnerable secrets in poetry form on Instagram, right? For no money, because it's me sharing my art. But the moment I want to turn it into something that's, actually going to bring in some income, I feel inauthentic about it because it's no longer art. And now I'm turning it into a business. And I struggle with that in between.
So this means there's an attachment to money. So it means you're either attaching worth to money. This is huge in entrepreneurship and solopreneurship and infopreneurship. Is that a lot of people make the mistake of putting their worth factor on the finances. And that can be a real big sticking point. Or like you were saying, it becomes inauthentic. Yeah. But the key thing is what you've got to remember is you need the resource of money and the transaction. The transaction needs to come from the customer because that's their chip to stay committed. There's so much science that if people don't pay you for something, their accountability is awful and they don't partake in the product.
And they don't,
so that's
they don't respect the product as much either, eh? Like they don't see the value in it. Yeah.
Exactly. But also from your aspect as the business owner, it's a case of if I have more resource, I can create bigger to serve people better, to create a team, we can get more tech. So it's a bit of a mind shift change, and it is really, really common. And I always find it's very, like, you've got to look at the models of business. You've got employee, solopreneur, entrepreneur to investor. And every single one of those four quadrants is a different person. You have to evolve to become a different person with a different mindset and a different skill set to move through the model. Now, from employee, you're safe. Like, as long as you have a job, someone's putting money in your pocket. There is no mental change. You're not having to put yourself out there for money. It's just, I work for this person, he pays me for my time, or she pays me for my time. As a solopreneur, then it's not. It's I have to be out there. And then people have to pay me for X, Y, Z. So there's a huge shift in terms of self-worth, confidence, belief, and also financial mentality or your financial mind to get that. And then into entrepreneurship, then it's the control battle. I need to relieve my control issues because this is my baby, and I need a team because entrepreneurs are the visionaries and the voice and the superpower, but the entrepreneur rids everything so that they can stay in their superpower. And the entrepreneur tends to drown when they don't relieve control, don't relieve their weaknesses, don't relieve the things that are stressing them out or they aren't great at to other geniuses, and then they start to sink. So yeah, and then that's what I'm trying to say is you've got to work out where you are on your business journey, and it sounds like right now you're going through those transitions, and the hardest one I find in business owners or people who we speak to and consult with is from solopreneur to entrepreneur, because they're the two biggest shifts, both financially, self-worth, confidence, putting yourself out there, exposing yourself, and then the big one, relieving control.
So let's step back for a moment and think about, okay, where did your journey start? So did you work in corporate or anything like that before, or what was your story before moving into this whole world?
Do you know what? I never got.
Why did you focus, and why is conscious, like, why is this element of like your mental self, your emotional self, your being as a human play so much into a part of who you become and what kind of services you provide to people in the world?
There's a lot. First things first, the biggest lesson for me in life was that you hear this buzzword a lot, which is finding your thing, finding purpose. And for me, it really, really did start as a thing like that, because everything I did where I wasn't in line with that was very unfulfilling. Now, my issue was I was very good at taking action, building things, even if it wasn't the right thing. And I'd always be the person who'd climb the mountain, look over and be like, didn't want to do that. Yeah. So I really think first, why I speak so much about personal life and business life is it's the same thing. Do you have personal purpose as well as business purpose? No, they're both the same things. If you look at someone, the two should mesh together, because your business is an amplification of your values, your purpose.
Would that work for as an employee as well? Like, how do we make that? So most people are employees. How do we make that apply to employees as well?
This is a fun thing. It's not up to the employee. The employee's job is to find the business that best suits for their values and purpose. Do you know what I mean?
Technically, it still applies. That makes perfect sense. So you're still, even whether or not you're launching a business, you're running your own business, or you're finding something that is a vehicle for you to enjoy your life from a professional perspective.
Exactly. So, I mean, it comes from both perspectives. The key person leading it needs to shadow down. Like, people need to understand we're working towards this. This is my place within this vision. This is what we're doing as a team. Making the wheels turn.
I lost you for a second there. That was me. I'm so sorry. Could you back up?
Yeah, no worries.
10 seconds?
Yeah. I was just saying that, like, you've got to realize that if a lot of people are shamed these days because they don't want to go out there and do their own thing, and that's fine. So some people just need to find the thing and go, do you know what? I'm actually really good at being the creative. I love creating clothes. Maybe I could be the lead creative in a fashion brand or XYZ. So it's perfectly okay to become a superstar employee and be great at what you do. I think that's the main thing. But the reason I speak so much about personal and business is because they both merge. Like, if you're not in line with these things and you're not playing to your strengths every day and you're not working towards something with purpose and meaning, it's very short-lived.
Right.
Like, it's great for the time, but it's never going to serve you in the future. Like, if you're a person who loves contribution and service, for you to be at a desk not helping people is hell for that person. If you're a creative and you're not allowed to express yourself or unleash your creative talents in the place where you're spending your best hours of the day, that's then going to become a prison. So
Right.
this is why, for me, it's just so important that everything merges, both personal, business, or if you don't want to create your own business, looking at where you are actually spending the best hours of your day and
Right.
lining things up.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things that in this sort of industry, from my understanding, that people talk about, and I guess it comes down to like the multi-level marketing thing too, where everyone's like, be your own, do your own, follow your dreams, come be an entrepreneur. And you're like, okay, calm down. But is people talk about the first time I was introduced to this concept, it was when I did some work with Vima, which was a multi-level marketing company. And hey, I made some good money there, but that's another story. Anyways, it starts with your why, right? Now,
Yeah.
there's another like school of thought that I heard recently, which is actually before the why, it starts with the who. So if you don't know who you are, then you don't know why. And I wondered if you could like talk to me a little bit about that sort of concept and what your thoughts were about all that.
Well, massively. You operate from your identity, don't you? Now, if you need to know specifically who you are at this moment of time, but also you need to know who you need to become. Because if you're an employee and you want to become a business owner, you need to build the skill set, grow, build the like, we have personal things like confidence, belief, the ability to speak and communicate. You need to grow those things. You need to become this human. And this is the fun thing. Like, a goal, a lot of people place so much on getting the goal, and it's not. It's the journey of getting there which sculpts you into this person who can carry through the mission or carry through the job at hand. So you're 100% right in what you're saying. You've got to be clear on who you are at current and work out who you need to become to make that job work or to build X, Y, Z, and then bridge the gap, because this is the person who's got to carry the why.
Right.
Do you know?
Yeah, that's
So,
just
yeah,
it.
you're
And I think
100%
that was
right.
one
I
of the
totally agree
things
with that.
that was one of the things I struggled with is, when I started doing, okay, let me figure out my why. What is my why? What is my reason for stuff? But it never really stuck that hard because I didn't even know what my values were in order to develop a strong why. Does that make sense? So I guess
Totally.
maybe the first step would be figuring out your who. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest things I've got in my own life is everything I do in life, I ask myself one question: is this congruent to who I need to become, to my goal, and to my future? Is what I'm doing right now congruent to that? And if it's not, then what the fuck am I doing?
I love it.
And that's it. You operate from who you are. Your identity is the thing that you operate from. Period.
So if you're someone who struggles, say you've been, obviously, if you've had a rough life or you've had a lot of struggles, or, on Maslow's hierarchy, you're still operating in survival mode, whatever these things are. And maybe you're coming out of that now, but a lot of people pick up a lot of trauma in their lives as they get older, especially going through, rough childhood or teenage years and stuff like that. And I know for myself, I came into my early 20s going, who on earth am I? And I was really behind. And I think there's a lot of people who are actually like that, and they feel lost in who that is. So what would you suggest as like your kind of baseline steps if you want to create a life that's incredible, or you want you want to do something big with your life, or you want to become a more self-actualized person, or all these things? What would you say like that process is? I know you have some coaching stuff, and I wonder if maybe there's a couple of tidbits you could talk about.
Yeah, totally. I just think you've got to stop. I think if you're at that point and you're continually trying to take action, learn things and grow, you're taking actions through fear over logic, or inadequacy. And I think that the big thing is to really stop and ask those questions. Like, where do I want to go? Who am I? Who do I need to become? What does my future look like? And I wrote an Instagram quote, it went pretty viral yesterday, which is like, it's the most underlooked life hack, which is at any moment in time, you can stop and you can change your story. You can say, this is not how the story ends. And I think a lot of people are letting life happen to them instead of grabbing the bulls by the horn and directing their own life. So I think the moment that someone is asking those questions is the moment that they need to stop. And that's usually the moment where someone will get into the driving seat of their own life.
So if you're already
And
asking these questions, you're probably
yeah,
already on the right track.
yeah, because awareness is the first step of change. If you're aware of this, you're subconsciously at some level trying to change it. So awareness starts the change process. But you've got to then move from awareness of what is to clarity of what can be, because that's the only bit where we'll usually tend to start making the journey across. Or we know what we need to grow, and we know what skills we need to get. We know the people we need to be around to get there. And I always think that's the main thing. I think a lot of us overcomplicate it. But if you really look at things, like, if you don't know who you are, I implore you to stop doing things and just focus on that one thing, because that's the most important thing. And if you don't know, because I was that person, then that's your permission slip to go and fucking find out. Go travel, go put yourself into new environments, go try new business models. I tried absolutely everything until I found the ones that I loved. And do you know what I mean? It always came around to the same things. And I think that's the beautiful thing about the unknown, is you have to take action to navigate the unknown. So you have to go out there and try things to make sense of it all.
I think it's interesting you say that, because I don't think that everyone has this sort of experience. I think that a lot of people do have a rough idea of what they're interested in. They know what they kind of like to some extent. And then there's other people who literally see the world as this giant, beautiful oyster or whatever. There's so many options to them, and they're almost overwhelmed by the options. I know for myself, I used to describe figuring out who I was and what I liked as imagining, like, you know, like a gingerbread cookie cutter. You like put that there, and you like pour a can of paint into it slowly, and all of the edges of the paint like kind of start going to the edge, and until it hit the wall of what it was, I had no idea what I liked or didn't like or where it was supposed to go. And the moment it touches the edges, you're like, there it is, don't like that, there it is, there's a boundary, here it is, and love that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. The thing I love about that is it falls so well in line with, like, we're conditioned throughout life to fit in boxes. School systems, we're never told to look inside. We're told what we should be, what we can be, what our insecurities are, that we're not good enough. We're told everything but to look inside and work out who the fuck you are. And I think that's the beautiful thing. I think obviously in doing that, you're working out where your box needs to be broke, or which box you need to go and move in towards. I think that's the main thing, is the moment you're not sure, you know at some level, if you're not in the right place, around the right people, doing the right thing, there's always something going off in you, and you've got to listen to it, you know.
Interesting. You mentioned something about choices, or like, you know, putting yourself in the driver's seat of your life. And I was actually having a conversation with my father about this morning, about how, you know, the word choice often makes people think that there's more than one thing next to it, but it doesn't have to mean that. It could also mean, like, just seeing there's only one path in front of you, but you're choosing to take that path instead of just being like, I have to take that path. Do you know what I mean? It's something that I've always thought was important.
Totally.
So even if you don't have a lot of options, say you maybe are stuck in that survival mode of Maslow's hierarchy or whatever, but if you choose to go to a job you don't like, but you say, I'm choosing this because I choose right now stability is important to me, or right now stability, or, you know, building my finances up so that in the future I'll have more options. Maybe that's important to me. Then you're suddenly armed with okay, I can go to this job now, not being miserable, not feeling like life's being lived for me without any of my say so, because I have a plan or I have a goal, or, you know, I'm aware of the reasons why I'm doing something. You don't have to, as you said, you don't have to want to go start a company and change the world. Maybe that's not what you want. Maybe you just want a simple life, and that's okay. But just know that that's what you want. And then when you're choosing that, you feel empowered by that. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, some people just want to go and help animals on safaris and stuff like that. And, like, you might know that, but there's a way for you to be able to go and do that. Like, you know, there's charities that will fund people to give up their lives to go and help animals. Like, there's always a way. It really is. It's just awareness. Just really, really, you've got to be aware. That's the biggest thing. I think it really is. If you look at billionaires or anything like that, they are masters at finding clarity and being aware of what's happening and what's happening in the future. And I think that really is the hidden trait, both in business, in your personal life, in relationships. Like relationships, are you aware that there's a communication barrier? Are you aware of your partner's love languages? Are you aware? Do you know what I mean? And then you're in a better position to navigate actions, choices, decisions, the works.
So tell me a little bit about kind of like your journey in your life. I know you said very short, you told me a bit about your current platform and your current project, but how did you get to where you are kind
of? Breaking point, basically. I just, yeah, this is what I was trying to say before. Like, I always did well, even if it wasn't the right thing. So I started off, I was effectively an athlete, gymnast, got to an extraordinarily high level in that from the age of 3 till like 14 or so. Now, if you can imagine being told that everything you do, the bend of a toe isn't good enough, that kind of sticks in your head over years from a child. Anyway, long story short, I basically, the gap in between that, ended up going through the education systems, very lost. I really suffered with anxiety. I felt like everyone around me knew what they wanted to do, but none of the boxes, even when I had the job counseling, where it's like, you need to do this, your skill set says you're an engineer. I was like, no, like I couldn't think of anything worse.
Right.
And the other thing is, I just really struggled with authority. I always found a way, like going in school, learning business from someone who doesn't own a business. I really struggled with that concept, and people got offended. What, you're teaching me business? What businesses have you built? None. Oh, problem. I'm questioning the teacher, but do you know what I mean? So, yeah, so basically out of school, then I suddenly just realized I was really good at creating. I really just enjoyed helping people. I wanted to do things. I was always doing things to earn money, car washing, selling DVDs and stuff like that on the estates as kids. And I just always had a natural knack for building things. It then took a bit of a jump into the fitness world. Obviously, coming away from being an athlete, that was all I ever knew. So I then jumped down the personal training route. We built a very large coaching platform, which was global. That blew up. It was my first business.
Is that the Nourish Group?
No.
Oh,
that's what's happening.
That's after. Okay.
So this was called Bodycomp, and it blew up. My issue was I just wasn't the right person to see that through. I was very young. Everything happened so fast. I didn't grow into the person I needed to be for that business to fully work. So I learned a lot of my large business lessons, a lot of personal lessons. I learned a lot from that, a hell of a lot. And it took me a long time to recover. But I'm so grateful that happened, because that for me was the slap that I was the problem in everything. So that business made me wake up. It made me go, no, like, this is the reason relationships are a problem. This is the reason leadership is a problem. This is a reason. Do you know what I mean? So it really did give me the huge wake up call to start looking inwards. And I committed to myself. I was like, you know what? I'm constantly working towards something, trying to build something, trying to achieve something. I'm just going to stop. It's like, I'm just going to go and disconnect. I'm going to go and, I don't want to use the word find myself, but I want to build a relationship with myself. Like, there's clearly things happening in the way of making decisions in business, like relieving control and stuff like that. So I wanted to go and fix all of that. And that's what I did. I just set out from the age of 23, 24, and just, I learned. I hired mentors. I found myself in some incredible networks of like psychologists, like coaches, like everything just fell into place. The moment I did that, the circles I found myself in were like people who were billionaires as their mindset coaches were then helping me. And I just ended up in all of these circles. And I really think that the moment I stopped resisting, life handed me a bit of a get out of jail card free. And the moment I stopped trying to fight and I was like, I'm the problem, I need to fix this. Literally the day after, I had a DM from some people who work with athletes and stuff like that. Like, hey, we've been following you on media. We noticed that things might be a little bit off. We want to extend our hand and help. And literally little things like that kept happening. It was like, no. And again, long story short, that entire process of doing that, I just was like, right, I need to let go of this Simon beta version and work out what the version of myself is that I need to become, and work towards building that. And that's how it became. And then as I started doing that, I started building different businesses. I started playing around with products. I started doing things that I love and that I enjoy. And I started building things around the things that I enjoy, watches and stuff like that. And but even though those things were doing really well and we were helping people, something still deep within me was like, you need to learn from this lesson and provide the platforms that can help other people. Because the biggest thing that I found is I wasn't the only one. At the
Right.
time, I felt like I was going through hell on my own, and I wasn't. Like, because now when I look back, I've now got the podcast platform and the social media platforms. The amount of people that reach out to me who are struggling in one of the areas that I now look back on, and as easy as they look now looking back, they were the biggest milestones, the biggest stones that I had to move in my own path to get to where I am now. And I think there's a lack of education. I think the school system fails us. It doesn't teach us the right skills that we need. And effectively, that's the next big thing for us, is to create networks, to create environments, to create communities of like minds, courses, masterminds, global summits, where people can come and get what they need, get that nourishment that will slingshot them through to the next phases.
And how do you stay away? So what I struggle with, again, so I think there's two schools of thought, right? There's this, like, as we talked about, I guess you could call it more of a masculine sort of perspective. And I don't mean that in terms of male or female. I mean more of like a dominant, aggressive, sales oriented, this, that, whatever.
Yeah.
And then more of a...
No, I totally, I think all that plays in line. I think, like, don't try and segment it. I think you're perfectly right. I think it does. Sexual energy orientations definitely feed into these areas. So,
okay.
Yeah.
And then on the feminine side, there's more of like, I guess more of the artist, creative. And again, I'm not referring to like females, but like, cause I don't want to generalize, but like, you know, for me, I have, as we said from the beginning, I have no problem sharing my art and this and that and the other thing. But then the moment I try to turn it into like aggressively trying to pursue something, or having the sales oriented mindset, or turning it into something that's monetized or whatever, I struggle with that in between, where you talked about I guess the moderation between the two. So one of the other things I've noticed is the language. So for example, in the past, I used to, if someone started saying something like talking about spirit or affirmations, like my brain would shut off. I'd be like, all right, enough. Okay.
Been there.
Right.
That was me. I was like, no.
Yeah. Okay. But it's interesting because if you change the language and you talk about, you know, if you change the word spirit to like intuition or something else, suddenly it's more approachable. I find that I have, I still resist sometimes hearing more of these like woo-woo concepts, because I think they go too far on the one side, but I also really not despise, that's a really strong word. I forget that. But I really dislike the whole people who are like, yeah, go get it, do this. And you know, sales, like those people. And so, but you can't really move forward if you're on either side of that spectrum. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you've just got to work out who you are. Like, where do you fall in that spectrum?
So it sounds to me like a lot of the stuff you do kind of plays in the middle, which is where you use a lot of this, like, let's tap into your mental health, let's tap into your self-actualization, your awareness, whatever, and use that to benefit your business. It's kind of like that medium between.
It's the tool for the action taker to move forwards with. You need it both. Like, I've been the action taker who went down the wrong line of taking action. He was very successful, but very poor in other areas.
Right.
Like, horrendously poor, an empty vessel with a lot of money.
Hey,
and then
at least you had one
I've seen it. Yeah. And then I've seen it down the other area where a lot of, I've ventured down that route, but I've not been down that route to the point where do you know what I mean? I kind of learned, I didn't go all down the route. And I saw it when I was living in Bali. There's a lot of people who are just there's too much of this manifestation thought process and stuff like that. And it's just like, you're losing opportunities in your thought process. You're constantly trying to find clarity, gain wisdom and insight by doing nothing. There is your problem. Wisdom comes through action. The right path comes through taking action. You get nowhere sitting around doing nothing. And that's the other aspect I've seen. Whereas I get there's elements that you can take from here that work for you, and there's elements here that you can take for you. And I genuinely believe that is where this industry is failing. You've got to give people the tools from both sides so that they can take what they need and what works for them, and then let them go.
Interesting.
Like, because otherwise, and that's the big thing. It's like, okay, when was the last time you took an action that moved you forwards? Like, if the answer wasn't like today or XYZ, then clearly we're fearful and we're too much in thought, which means we're not going to gain the
thought
results.
is a very good, interesting perspective.
Yeah.
It's like a lot of the people that I speak to, a lot of the people in my world, so to speak, fall in the too much thought world. Whereas for Mike's world is too much in the action without enough thinking. It's really interesting seeing that dynamic between the two of us. Our audiences are completely different, but both of them need the opposite sort of whatever, right? I wanted to ask you on that note, for your clients, because I know you do a lot of coaching and whatever, would you find that a lot of the clients you have, if there was a commonality between them, would you say they're more not enough action or not enough tools? Or, you know what I mean?
No. So a lot of the people I work with are I work with a lot of like people who are crushing it in the business field. Yeah. So I don't really attract that type of, I think it's because I call it out very quick. I'm very like, you're full of shit. This stops. This is getting you nowhere. So I think it's because I'm quite to that approach. But that's pretty much the majority I work with. It's the people who have kind of on the right paths. It's just, they don't know, like, does that make sense? So where do I go next? I've achieved that first level of business.
Okay.
I'm very stuck. Like, what's next? How do I scale this up? That sort of approach, really. How do I become the person within that?
That what they're lacking is more self-aware, like the self-awareness world, or is it they're lacking practical business knowledge? Because it seems to me like if you have a lot of successful people coming to you that are empty, that seems like you're kind of, is that the right?
It's a bit of both.
Is it? Okay.
It's a bit of both, because you've got to, I was always good at puzzles. And I always say this, people are like, what is your genius power? And I'm like, I can't really explain this, but I can see things and connect the dots immediately in people and businesses. Like, I can immediately see, this is a problem, this is a problem. These are your problems. This is what's stopping this. And it's just, bam. It's like, well, I got it. But that's the big thing for me, is I can see it in different things. If a person's building a business or a service-based business, it needs to be built around the things that they love doing, because they'll stop and the heart will fall from the entrepreneur. As soon as they lose fun, excitement, they disconnect from the business fails. So for me, it's just a constant thing of making sure that everything's moving forwards together. And I think really that is it in a nutshell.
So you have to go back to the beginning again, and who are you and why? So each time you're kind of feeling lost, you start at the beginning again.
Yeah. And you grow. As you grow, different things will grow. The things that you want to do in the business might want to grow and change. So how do you do that? What team, what tech, what project can we do that's going to allow that?
I like that. You said something on one of your posts the other day. I think something like 1 million likes will never matter if you don't like yourself, or something like that. Was that right?
Yep. That's
so
one of many.
yeah, for sure. But I think there was that really stuck out to me, because it's a very simple concept, obviously. But it's the same thing with the money, right? Like, you could have a lot of money, but if you don't like what you're doing or aren't feeling fulfilled or whatever that is, you know.
Yeah.
And then the other side of it, you could love yourself, but you could also have no money and not be able to make any impact and influence in the world. So you got to step it up.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing I found on that topic is too many people their eyes on their own path. We're constantly comparing ourselves on social media to other people, what other people's brands are doing, and not paying enough attention to our own. I genuinely feel that right now, people make so much effort for social media that they don't make an effort in real life. I literally feel that is where we're at. I see that in businesses and stuff like that, where people are just paying so much attention to Instagram and everyone else on Instagram that they're not paying attention to their own campaigns, their own audiences. Like, why is your energy everywhere else for the people who you need to serve?
How do you stay on track from that? I'm sure there are temptations here and there where you get lost in, your vanity metrics or this, or how do you, what are some of the tools you would say that you use?
I do dashboards. For me, I like to see progress and KPIs. So every morning, I have a dashboard. Has this moved forwards? What are the things that I'm working towards? And I can see daily my progressions. I had a mentor who, very, very successful man, let's put it that way. I think he was 9-figure businesses. He had 6 of them. So you can imagine where he was in life.
Right.
When I first got help from him, he made me stop, and I had to set an alarm on my phone for every hour I was awake. and I had to do 10 minutes of journaling every hour that the alarm went off.
How long did you do that for?
A week. Who was
Oh
I
my
around?
God.
What did I spend my time doing? How effective was I? How did certain things make me feel? And it was like it was so intense of an awareness exercise. I realized how much of my day was lost. I was
Wow.
losing so much time. And there's a really scary statistic. Half an hour every day over the duration of a year is a month of life.
Holy shit.
So half an hour focusing on I think the maths on that, right? I think that's the correct. It's been ages since I've done that. I think it's around that.
Okay.
It's either a month or 2 weeks. It's one of those two numbers, but like, I think it's a month. Yeah. But if you spend half an hour just like doing one thing consistently over the duration of a year, you've spent a month on that project. Like
Wow. I
learning
like
Spanish.
that. Because the other thing is that same mentality people think about for wasting time, right? They're like, oh my God, you just wasted a month of time by scrolling on TikTok.
Yeah.
Okay, nothing's
But
wrong with that. But having a more positive perspective, like you just said, spending half an hour on something, taking action, I'd
yeah,
never thought about it that way.
it's madness. But that's what I had done. So for a week, it was who you around. Like I was like, I'm losing a lot of time, and then that's actually going into my next 4 hours because I'm still thinking about this bullshit conversation I had here. So it made me aware of like a lot of the things, people, habits, routines, the way I was that was actually not serving me.
Hmm.
And that was a huge transformative exercise at a very young age that I did. And I strongly recommend everyone does it. I think if you feel like you're not getting anywhere in life, really do that, because you'll soon realize how much time that you will never get back is being wasted.
Wow. I like that
Yeah.
a lot. So I'm going to wrap up pretty soon here. We've shared a lot of great stuff, and I think this has been really a great conversation. But I wanted to ask you a more personal question. So, is there a time in your life that you perhaps had a projection, you were doing all these things, and something happened, and you like fell off that path, and how did you get back? I imagine everyone has
Yeah.
something like that happens to them, which is why I
Mine
created this
was,
scenario.
mine sucked. It hurt so bad. Mine was that bodycon business. I blew up. I was like the local celebrity. Everyone watched the rise.
Mm.
It was all over social media. Everyone was tagging me and stuff, and like all that sort of stuff. And I think I just bought too much into my own hype as well. And effectively, like I lost myself in that, and it built up on media as well as fell down, and it broke me. I left that very lost, realizing that who I was that it just was, everything was wrong, and
Right.
that was the hardest. That was a very hard position for me. It took me a long time, but at the same time, I'm grateful. It grounded me. It taught me lessons. It's made me very bulletproof with who I actually am. Like I genuinely think now I'm very unshakable. Like someone can give me criticism, like okay, fine. Like it's given me what I needed to become who I need to become. And
So
it sucked, but it took me a long time to accept that. I
I
went
think
through a
that
lot
it's
of grieving
interesting
through that process.
because that whole thing, something that I've been exploring in my life, it's about attachments, right? The
Big
attachments
time.
you attach to the successes you have, to whatever they are. Last year I really enjoyed climbing. Climbing was one of the reasons
Oh,
why.
I've seen.
No, thanks. One
Oh
of the
man.
reasons why I managed to I was in a really dark place 5-6 years ago, and climbing kind of really pulled me out. I'm not a good climber by any means, but I did wrap a lot of my identity up into it. And last year I
Keyword.
had like a year of bad days. Like I couldn't climb well and I couldn't enjoy it. And so after about a year of that, I was like, oh my God, who am I? I started having all these problems with myself. And it wasn't just climbing, it was a lot of other things as well. I stepped away from it all. So I've always been into fitness. I've always been someone who works out 4 or 5 days a week. COVID hit, I worked out twice.
Yep.
In the last 5, I mean, I've just gotten back into everything now, but for 4 or 5 months, I tried to just stop and ask myself who I was without all these things. And there were some really uncomfortable things that came up about it.
Well, you hit the key word on the head. It's identity again. Like it really is like that. And that's the thing. A lot of people outgrow their identity. They're still trying to live off an old identity and not go in search of what's next. And this is what I was trying to say. It's very important that because what worked for you yesterday might not work for you tomorrow. But it's very important that you understand that. And that's what I did. My identity became the fitness guy, the fitness guru, the person who's got this global business and team XYZ, and I became a person who I'm not. I let. Does that make sense? And unfortunately, that was it. And it literally took the crack for me to go, oh, this explains so much. This explains so much. But the beautiful thing about rock bottom is it sets the foundations for great heights. So it stripped me. It absolutely stripped me bare. In a nutshell, it's like, okay, so these are the things that are really important to you. These are the things that you're really great at. These are the lessons you learned from this, this, and this. But most importantly, it's who do I need to become next? And that was it. Anything that didn't align to this next version was stripped away, period. And I never looked back.
I like that. I was going to ask you for a takeaway, but that sounds like kind of like one. I guess the last question I'll have for you is, what personally are you, or what concept or tool are you working on implementing in your life right now?
Oh, I think this could actually be a really good sum up for your audience. The biggest thing I found is people aim for intensity instead of consistency. I see this in business, I see this in startups, I see this in brands. They go intense over consistent. Now, you can think about this in any area of life, relationships, fitness, health. If you go all in and do something too quick, you can burn out and it doesn't last. Whereas, like we were saying before, with the half an hour every day consistently compounded is going to return a greater result. Wow. So right now for me, I've always been a bullet out of a gun when it comes down to projects or ideas. It happens, action, action, action. And I can be very intense, but then trip up a little bit with consistency. So for me, it's setting things that are more KPIing the consistent things that are going to compound in the future. So that's it, really. I think I'm in a good position with it. I've not done it for a while, but I know now, like we're going to invest in a coffee brand and stuff along the lines of that I don't want to go back down the routes of doing that in business. I want to be consistent, methodical, logical, and not emotional and get so caught into the doing.
I really like that. I think that's great. I think, again, you're taking a tool that works for you because you need that. If you're somebody who doesn't ever really do anything strongly, and they just slowly, maybe they do need more of that intensity. But for you, it sounds like me, the consistency thing, the struggle.
Well, you see it, like humans are endurance athletes, and that's what we forget. A lot of us try and become sprinters in business, in relationships, XYZ. Like people attach to relationships in the first 3 months and then they die.
Yeah.
It's like in businesses, people go all in for the first month, which is great because people take crazy action and get something off the floor, but it might not be the right actions.
Not sustainable.
They might not be able to sustain it, so I just think you've got to look at that, is like, look at areas of your life where you might be going into things so intense, because usually what leads the intensity is emotion or fear of failure, or the emotion of pleasure.
It's interesting you say, sorry, continue, please finish.
Yeah,
I think I'm on a bit of a lag. I apologize. That's why there's a little bit of interrupting going on.
No. And I was just saying, just maybe I think that's been the biggest lesson for me over the last couple of years, really, is just trying to be more consistent. You hear it all the time. Consistency is the key. I
love it. I think it's great. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for this conversation. It was wonderful chatting with you. I think that you have a lot of obviously great insights, and I love that you have this balance between both. This is an interesting podcast for me. I just realized you're actually the only man I've actually interviewed so far. I've only done, I think, 14 episodes, but I keep finding I bring women on, and maybe it's because I relate to them more. And I was like, no, this guy has a lot of that softer side, because I find a lot of the men that are out there that are on social media that are doing all these things that have this presence are very what I was just talking about, the sales, the ego, the whatever. And I didn't really want to talk to anyone like that, to be honest.
Yeah. I've been that guy. It didn't work. Yeah, it leads you down a very dark hole.
Well, I guess the ultimate goal is to find a balance between the two, right?
Which, again, the thing that I love about these conversations is you always loop back. Like, it's like what you were saying before when you were trying to play down the language between male energy and feminine. You've got to understand them both. Both is the yin and the yang. Yep.
I love it.
Stay central.
Well, thank you so much, Simon. This is great. I'm going to link up all of your contact info and whatever in the show notes. And if there's anything else you want me to include, then just let me know, and I'll throw them in there.
No, I appreciate it. Look, if people like what we speak about, obviously we've got our own podcast, XYZ, so you know where to find us. Very easy
Sounds
person
good.
to find.
All right, great. Thanks so much.